Good afternoon and good evening everywhere. You are watching us from on behalf of the Nepal Institute for International Cooperation and Engagement and the Water Policy Center. It gives me a great pleasure to extend a warm welcome to our distinguished speaker, chair and participant who registered for this event. This is the eighth section of the conference. To chair and moderate this section, it's a really pleasure to have you, Dr. Saraswati Unni ma'am, here with us. Dr. Saraswathi Unni is a senior research fellow and program director at the Water Policy Center in Aurangabad. She is researching and mobilizing research on water, food energy next. She had been associate professor and head department of political science in NSC Ratnam College in Mumbai. Professor Unni has engaged in teaching and research, having for more than 35 years in this field. Dr. Saraswati has been awarded a PhD from the University of Mumbai for her research on energy. Apart from this, she has presented papers in several national and international conferences in USA, UK, China, Spain, Australia, Canada, and Portugal. She has also published many research papers, national and international, in journals and books. She writes on gender, energy, governance, and development issues. Without any further ado, let me now Dr. Saraswati Unni to moderate the section.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me now? I'm audible?
Yes, ma'am, yes.
Okay, so do we have Swiya Sangrola here?
Yes.
Is she present?
Right here.
Yeah, okay. So let's begin with Swiya, who is assistant professor at the Kathmandu School of Law, Purvanchal University, Nepal. She will be speaking on human rights, audit of pharmaceutical companies and health sector during COVID-19 crisis. So over to you, Swiya. You will have 20 minutes for every presentation, after which if we have time, we'll go for the question and answer session.
Okay.
So Swiya.
Yes. Namaste, good evening. Thank you, Dr. Unni, for for handing over the podium to me, a virtual podium to discuss some of the most important issues facing the world and humanity today. So I have 20 minutes, but I would like to take about 10 to 15 minutes so we have more time for the presentation. My name is Swecha Sangrola. As the chair mentioned, I'm an assistant professor of law at Kathmandu School of Law, Purvanchal University. I am a young I've just joined the teaching faculty, so it hasn't been a lot of years, but a few years. I completed my master's from Harvard Law School, where I focused on global governance, international institutional organization law, and in general legal theory and philosophy. I must admit at the very outset that I have very little direct exposure working with the public health sector, and I've been invited to speak on pharmaceutical companies and auditing through human rights approaches. So I must admit my weakness about my very limited exposure to the public health aspect and on-hand experience with pharmaceutical companies. However, I am in a position where I am able to observe if there is a divorce between public health and human rights and law. And this was the case when when I was in law school, I signed up for a Save the Children project, which was about whether mothers in rural parts of Nepal are taking care of themselves and are taking adequate precautions in maintaining their nutrition and reproductive rights and health. So I was a young student. I really didn't know much about what I was doing. I had a list of questions and a questionnaire that I was supposed to fill. I went and talked to some women from rural parts of Nepal, and I asked a question, and I was surprised by their response. They said that they had been going to hospitals for delivering children, and the maternal mortality rate in Nepal had gone down significantly from the past few years. And I was amazed by this accomplishment. So after my research was over, I dug deeper and started having a conversation with her. And I said, wow, the data is really nice. You're going to the hospital. So what is the reason behind this? So the context is public health-wise, indicator-wise, it was a big success that we were getting women from Nepal to go to the hospitals to deliver their babies. Great. But I was also a student of human rights, so I started talking to them about the motivations. And number one was the government incentive that they were getting paid to go and have their babies delivered in hospitals. I dug deeper, and then the real reason came out, and she said that a lot of public health experts, I wouldn't want to name organizations, but they had convinced women from rural Nepal to go deliver their babies in hospital, because they said, if you don't go and deliver your baby in the hospital, your husband is going to leave you, because he is going to have another wife, because there are certain facilities in the hospital, such as operations and stitching. If you don't get that done, your husband will bring you will bring another wife. So and that seemed to be a very big psychological reason for why women, and that got me thinking. As a young student, I thought, wow, the results are really good, but process-wise, what motivations and what kind of logic are we using for women in general to take advantage of health? Same was the case during the Ebola in Africa. I heard a podcast where someone mentioned that one reason they were so successful in eradicating Ebola in some villages were simply told that people with Ebola had some kind of a disease that was given by the gods. So if you went closer to that person, you would get it. So logic-wise, people didn't go close to that person. But in terms of human rights and motivations, that got me thinking about the importance of auditing the process. There is a logic, a very Machiavellian logic about the end justifies the means, or all is well that ends well. So that got me interested in the process of rethinking the process with which we reach an outcome. And in the post-COVID scenario, I'm not sure if we're in that situation yet, or if we will even ever reach the new normal, because I see a possibility where a lot of inherited biases and schemas from international order from the days will still come in this new situation. So I don't think it will be a new normal, because I think pharmaceutical companies and stakeholders will continue working in the same fashion under a different circumstance, that is the COVID. Now, in particular, today in the next 10 minutes, I want to address the process of developing drugs and testing the COVID drug. I think we had a panelist who was going to talk about vaccine diplomacy. I would love to hear from her. But I would focus more on the experimentation and the ethics and human rights behind developing the COVID drug. I dug deeper, and I was surprised by the amount of literature that was available on the ethics of experimentation on in human beings. There's a lot of good stuff. You have to get informed consent. You have to make sure they know about the risks and benefits of being tested with a vaccine. So lots of good stuff. Everything looks good so far. On paper, it looks great. So then I put it in context. Nepal, I am from Nepal. Nepal has just accepted, the Ministry of Health has given permission to the Chinese company Hongxi and Russian vaccine and Oxford University's vaccine to be tested in Nepal. This is the phase 3 of testing. Then a bunch of questions emerged about some analogy could be drawn between the way multinational companies work and the way global pharmaceutical companies, whether government funded or private institutions, work. Do not get me wrong, I have a lot of respect for a lot of activities being done and research being done by pharmaceutical companies, and governments' right to health is enshrined in international documents. The International Covenant on Social Economic Rights talks about the right to have the highest attainable standard of health, and states have every duty to make sure they prevent epidemics. But still, there is some kind of a similarity between a multinational company that goes to Vietnam and gets cheap labor to make a branded shoe, which they themselves cannot later afford to buy. So they will, and pharmaceutical companies doing different kind of studies of drugs. Now, we don't know what the situation is going to be like in the COVID scenario, but I can draw from the AIDS testing, vaccine testing procedures and others. And there was a brilliant book written by Ben Goldacker, who teaches at the London School of Hygiene, called Bad Pharma, pardon me. And there were some very surprising results about how there is this outsourcing of testing to poorer countries and developing countries was very much similar to the way the multinational corporations outsource production and manufacturing to the poorer parts of the country. And imagine a Nike shoe and a drug that saves lives. They are very similar in the way they operate. In terms of soft laws, there are the Helsinki Declaration on the ethics of human experimentation, blah, blah, blah. But in case of AIDS, for example, when the drug was tested in the population of Africa, later on, when the drug was developed, the African populations on whom the HIV drug was tested, they themselves were not able to afford the drug. And this was after the Helsinki Declaration came into practice, which said that pharmaceutical companies and anyone who is testing the drug have a basic minimum ethical obligation to make sure that when they are choosing a sample population to test their drugs, you have to make sure they will be able to afford it. And despite that, in practice, for example, there have been a lot of cases. I don't want to bore you with the nitty-gritties of the law, but simply put, global pharmaceutical companies, especially from big countries, are able to outsource their testing because it is definitely cheaper for them to test their drugs in poorer parts of the world. If you wonder why is that, there might definitely good intentions. Like I just heard that polio has been completely eradicated from the face of the earth. There's a lot of good intention and effort behind that. I am all for international solidarity, but I feel as a student of law and philosophy, questioning the dominant narratives, everyone wants a drug, we must be happy and we must accept it. But this is especially for the developing countries. How do you assess the risk and the benefit of allowing big countries to come to your country and letting your population be tested? So where do you draw that line? Because tomorrow, whether if there is an injury, the compensation will be determined according to the national law. That is the country in which the drug is being tested. One reason why multinational companies go to poorer countries is because poorer countries have lax labor standards. So they take advantage of the weak laws on labor and compensation and working standards. So in case there is a damage, and if in case there is a case, they won't have to pay as much fine as they would have to pay in the United States of America. If a testing goes horribly wrong in the UK or in the US, you can imagine the amount of legal liabilities that the companies would have in their own country. And one reason I found the similarity that in developing countries, because our laws about compensation and drug testing are not as strict as most developed countries, that is one reason why there is so much charm for testing these drugs. So this seems like a bad scenario. However, there are some very good points. The government of Nepal, for example, has a very strong Nepal Health Research Council and Ethical Committee Board that talks about all of these things, but it hasn't been able to make pronouncements on, for example, if the drug does get accepted and the drug does come out, what benefits will the population of Nepal get out of it? Will they even be able to afford it? So these are the things they have to work out, because on paper, everything looks great and nice, but in reality, there is a lot that needs to be done. That said, as a concluding point, I will still say that human beings are different because they have a zeal and a knack for exploration and innovation. When there is a space launch, whether it's from India or Russia or United States, I am I am very excited because it unites me with the rest of the world. It doesn't matter if the vessel, if the rocket that is being launched is from the territory of Nepal, because then I have my macro identity as a human being, helps me. And in that regard, I think we must welcome China, UK, and Russia for showing an interest in testing the COVID vaccine in Nepal. However, I am also scared that the lessons from the past may be forgotten in the new normal. Because it's a new normal, we cannot forget what has happened before. With that, I would like to conclude my presentation. If there are more questions, we can go for a discussion. Thank you.
I think we'll go for the questions in the end,
yeah,
after all the presentations.
Sure.
Is there anybody here who would like to ask questions? Because we have time actually. Is there anyone? Okay. So can I ask you one question?
Sure. Yes. Yes.
So this would be about can you tell us specifically about any particular vaccine that is being tested right now, COVID vaccine in Nepal? Are you aware of any Chinese or Russian companies
Yes.
that have approached the Nepalese population?
Yes.
Or the people, the government of Nepal, regarding testing any specific vaccine?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's a good question. So it was on the 24th of August, I heard a news that the Ministry of Health has given permission to 3 stakeholders to go on with the phase 3 of the vaccine. So what the next step, I do not think they are testing as of now, but they have started the process. And they will soon allow the Oxford University vaccine and the Russian vaccine and Chinese vaccine to be tested for phase 3 in Nepal. And the next step is that the Nepal Health Research Council, which is the body that looks at the ethical implication of health research, will look at different requirements, whether they are going to meet the requirements within the national law of Nepal, and the law itself is pretty good. It has a lot of good standards from international instruments as well. So we're in the process. We don't have a lot of information. Unfortunately, that is a problem in most parts of the world, where you can go to the website and you will see official press releases, but a lot of the nitty-gritty is about what kind of requirements these companies have to meet before getting permission. Those aren't part of the public domain, and unfortunately that is a big problem. So that is the only thing that is in the domain, and that's all I know about. Yeah.
So now, are there advocacy groups that can help in Nepal? Are there enough advocacy groups that can help to ensure transparency and affordability in particular?
Yes, the consumer protection groups in Nepal are very strong. We recently had a case 3 years back regarding the very expensive medicines, and this NGO took up a case about expensive medicines and went to the Supreme Court of Nepal, and the Supreme Court of Nepal very strongly said, if you make medicines expensive, that is as good as denying the right to health of a citizen under fundamental right. So these are very strong judgments, and I am hoping that the judiciary is taking note of what is happening. A lot of the things are not in public domain, so I would probably not best placed to give the details, but I will definitely be looking out for these details as much as I can, and hopefully have another platform where we can talk about this more.
But very interesting outlook and a presentation there. Thank you so much, Swechha. Can we now move on to Dr. Anna? Is Dr. Anna present? Dr. Anna Velikaya?
Yeah. Hello, dear colleagues. Can you hear me?
We can. So Dr. Anna Velikaya from Russia, she's going to speak on Russian humanitarian diplomacy during the COVID-19 pandemic, foreign policy, and peace diplomacy goals. So over to you, Dr. Anna Velikaya.
Yes, thanks a lot, Dr. Namaskara. Dobry день. Hello, I'm Anna Velika from Institute of World Economy and International Relations, Russian Academy of Sciences. I'd like to thank Nepal Institute of International Cooperation and Engagement and Water Policy Center for this opportunity to present my paper on Russian humanitarian diplomacy during the COVID pandemic, foreign policy and public diplomacy goals. The provision of humanitarian assistance to foreign countries is an essential part of humanitarian policy, also including strengthening public administration, building infrastructure, maintaining security and stability, ensuring the educational process, developing healthcare, and fostering economic growth. The countries providing humanitarian aid brand themselves as leaders in the field of education, science, economy, demonstrating the attractiveness of the chosen model of state system. Countries are taking these steps not only for the sake of humane motives of providing assistance to those in need, but also for nation branding in priority regions. It's also aimed at fulfilling foreign political and economic tasks, increasing loyalty of citizens of recipient states. Countries providing humanitarian assistance during the pandemic demonstrate successful economic models, advanced science, and effective policy. Since activities in the humanitarian field are related to foreign policy tasks, most of the efforts in this sphere are carried out by governmental and semi-governmental institutions, although with the involvement of civil society. At the same time, this tool is not a panacea as it brings results in the long run and only in combination with attractive domestic and foreign policies. Although it may seem the process of providing humanitarian assistance is standardized, in the reality the programs are adjusted to local conditions. Each country has special regulations, different aspects of working with government bodies, specific conditions for the activities of foreign organizations. It's based on needs assessments, on the requests of an external audience, and creating solutions that meet them. Soviet scientists successfully participated in solving problems of global importance, including the creation of polio and smallpox vaccines, the development of the foundations of radiobiology, the study of radiation sickness and methods of its treatment, and space physiology. Since the end of the Cold War until early 2000s, Russian humanitarian aid programs were substantially cut. It was a unilateral disarmament in this sphere. The necessity for using it more actively was realized in Russia 20 years ago. That is the reason why all mechanisms of its participation in the engagement with foreign audiences and international development assistance have only recently been re-established. Both Russia and post-Soviet countries have a unique approach towards humanitarian cooperation. It's seen as being broader than international development assistance and international aid, or even broader than public diplomacy. Currently, Russia spends about $1 billion annually under an open budget line on projects in the field of international development assistance. But these funds go through the UN structures, and their recipients often do not realize that it is provided by Russian taxpayers. It's planned to redirect it as the bilateral aid to regions that are strategically important for Russia, link them with current humanitarian aid, and receive long-term reputational dividends to achieve a positive or neutral attitude towards Russia from the target audience. This realization is what led to the adoption of the concept of the Russian state policy in the sphere of international development assistance. It has moved its priorities from international institutions towards a more regional direction. Russia has started pursuing an active and targeted policy in the field of international development assistance. In this regard, it has signed a landmark partnership framework agreement with UNDP, creating a Russia-UNDP Trust Fund. So its aid is now more region-oriented and target-focused. Unfortunately, Russian civil society is not widely involved in public diplomacy and humanitarian aid agenda. There are various reasons for this, from the administrative barriers to the misunderstanding of businesses on the importance of national branding. We are also witnessing the lack of actors, especially of independent ones. And as for the COVID situation, Russia has provided assistance in the fight against coronavirus to almost 50 countries, mainly through bilateral channels. According to the Humanitarian Monitor Project, the top priority were post-Soviet and Eurasian states, more than 50% of aid. Also, it was Europe, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Italy, and Serbia, Middle East and North Africa, Algeria, Iran, Lebanon, and Syria, Afghanistan, USA, South and Central America, Caribbean, Brazil, Venezuela, Guatemala, Dominican Republic, Costa Rica, Cuba, Nicaragua, Panama, El Salvador. Southeast Asia, Indonesia, Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar. Sub-Saharan Africa, Guinea, Congo, Djibouti, Namibia, Senegal, South Africa, and Sierra Leone. Oceania, Nauru. It corresponds with regional priorities of Russian public diplomacy and humanitarian cooperation that may be divided into two groups. The first one is Russia's top priority, post-Soviet Eurasian countries. The second one is other countries that are in need of foreign aid or are considered as difficult partners, like the USA, or those that are interested in dialogue. Russian activities in this field are global and include assistance to the sub-Saharan countries of Africa, developing countries of Asia-Pacific integration structures, and fostering cooperation with the Middle East, North Africa, and Latin America. In addition to bilateral assistance, Russia has allocated additional funds to counter the coronavirus through multilateral channels in the form of financial contributions to Russia UNDP Trust Fund, to International Red Cross Committee, and to the World Health Organization. Provided humanitarian aid was in the form of test systems of medical equipment, medicines, food, and financial resources. Medical personnel was sent to 11 countries. Mostly widely covered in media were Russian Ministry of Defense missions to Italy and Serbia. Even the terms mask diplomacy and coronavirus diplomacy were coined. Although I suppose that if everything is diplomacy, then nothing is diplomacy, so we should be careful about creating and coining new diplomacies. Russian institutions providing humanitarian aid may be divided into two groups. The main part of supplies went through the government of the Russian Federation, through the Ministry of Health, Rospotrebnadzor, and the Federal Medical or Biological Agency. The second group includes non-governmental and commercial organizations, like Russia Direct Investment Fund, Rosatom state corporations, Russian Orthodox Church, sub-state diplomacy initiatives. For example, Russian ethnic Turkic regions were providing aid to Central Asian states. Also, Russian NGOs were participating in providing humanitarian assistance, and also these were private humanitarian initiatives of Russian diplomats. Since the beginning of the pandemic, Russia has actively provided other states with a variety of assistance. Like other donor states, over the past 6 months, Russia has directed humanitarian efforts to counter the spread of the infection. Russia has created the world's first coronavirus vaccine. More than 20 countries have made requests to purchase over 1 billion doses of Russia's Sputnik V coronavirus vaccine, including Brazil, Kazakhstan, India, Mexico, Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates. So we can assume that Russian humanitarian cooperation is aimed to support other countries and regions while creating an attractive image of their own country. And I was glad to hear from the previous speaker that currently there is a project in Nepal with testing this vaccine. And in the conclusion, I'd like to say that cooperation between states in the field of countering the pandemic at the diplomatic and intergovernmental level continues. But at the same time, we are witnessing that the motives of national egoism still prevail. And meanwhile, in times of pandemic, humanitarian aid is becoming a more needed instrument capable of laying the ground for international cooperation and promoting the international agenda while branding the country as leader in technology, the economy, and knowledge. Humanitarian diplomacy initiatives interconnected with public diplomacy can be very timely to resolve global threats. Dhanyavada, spasiba, thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Velikaya. You can hear me now. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I just want to throw it open for questions. Is there anyone who would like to ask questions? Because we do have time. I guess we have. Okay, so I guess there's no one who wants to ask a question. So may I? I wanted to ask you specifically whether you know anything about the Russian vaccine and when is it likely to be released if that is not possible. Are they likely to share this vaccine with other countries?
Yes, I suppose that it would be given in the form of commercial deals, like already we have contracts with 20 countries, and possibly it would be given as humanitarian aid, but as for now I haven't seen such information, because for sure we have our own population that is in need of this vaccine, and there are millions of people desperately needing it. So I suppose that for sure it would be on commercial ground, but maybe it would be also given to some partner states of top priority. So it would be a very important diplomatic question how it would be shared with our partners.
Yeah, good. Is there anyone who would like to ask questions, or we can move on to the next person? Okay, so then thank you very much, Dr. Velika. Thank you. We could be asking you questions later if we have time. Is that okay? Yeah. So can we have Sushmita Das? Is she available?
She is not there. She is
not.
not.
Okay, then Dr. Sonali Singh.
Yeah, she is there.
Dr. Sonali Singh.
Please unmute yourself, please.
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, hi. Okay, so Dr. Sonali Singh from Jayaprakash University, India, will speak on vaccine diplomacy, who gets it, when and how. So over to you, Dr. Sonali Singh.
Thank you, respected chair and all the honored participants attending this webinar. Greetings from Bihar, India. I would like to start with thank you for having me into this conversation, and it's really joyful and honor for me. If anything that kills over 10 million people in the next few decades, it is most likely be a contagious virus and not a war. This was the line said by Bill Gates in his tech talk in 2015. My topic for today's presentation is on vaccine diplomacy, and the blurb followed who gets, how, and when is just to indicate the power dynamics involved in this vaccine formation and distribution. So coming back to what Bill Gates has warned us 5 years back, he clearly said that we are not ready, we are not prepared for any epidemic. And here we are after 5 years. And we have 24 million people infected worldwide because of this coronavirus, and 822,000 people are diseased. And literally the whole economy disrupted because of this pandemic. Yes, we were not prepared. When the WHO announced on 30th of January that this coronavirus pandemic is a global health crisis, since then it is more than 210 days, and each day remained painful for us to see in the news what is happening around us in every part of the world. So what is the solution? And everyone is hoping for, a vaccine. And nowadays we all are into discussion, when will the vaccine be ready? But I believe that the more important question, or the more pressing question, is when the vaccine will be ready, how will it be distributed or used or purchased for 7.8 billion population? Here comes the role of vaccine diplomacy. Vaccine diplomacy is a part of global health diplomacy that relies on use and delivery of vaccines for foreign policy advantage. And we have seen in the past how vaccines have been used as a tool to peace building, or as a tool to mitigate conflict resolution. The classic example from Cold War could be in the 1950s, when Albert Bruce Sabin collaborated with Soviet virologists to test and license polio vaccine, and he got succeeded. His team got succeeded by the end of 1950s, and at that time 10 million Soviet children received that vaccine. That was a collaborative effort of Soviet and US virologists. And for that, Soviet government later on honored Sabin by the highest civilian medal. And another example that we can take, the US administration learned from this bilateral success of diplomacy, and what it did later on was send 35 million medical supplies to Cuba in assurance of exchange of 1,700 prisoners from the Fidel Castro administration. And we have one more example, classic example, if you go a little back in early 1800, when Edward Jenner, who British inventor of smallpox vaccine, got appointed as a foreign member of France Institute or Institute of France. And he was also called by both the governments to mitigate a prisoners exchange. So, and there was a famous line by Edward Jenner, the science never goes into war. So learning from all those past experiences, what do we have now for the present crisis to deal with? Can we use that bilateral, diplomacy to establish peace or maybe to resolve conflict? For that, we need to understand the nature of current pandemic or the crisis. The current coronavirus pandemic is unique in nature. It is unique because of the size of shock people have. It is unique because of the size of population affected by it. It is unique because of the trauma it carries with us for the people. And above all, the world order has changed. We are living in a globalized world where we are interconnected and interrelated more than ever, or interdependent more than ever, and we cannot afford to shut down our doors for long or shut down our borders for long for other nations. So what options do we have? A plausible option that my study I have found in my study is multilateral diplomacy, and luckily we have it working. I may take this example of COVAX pillar. COVAX pillar, that is a pioneer project by Gavi, a unit of Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which is a public-private partnership, and it has funding from the government, the foundation, or the private corporations and individuals. So COVAX pillar is we can say a flagship project that we have in the present time, that is a ray of hope, because all governments are under pressure to provide vaccine to its population, and it is not possible for a single nation to produce that amount of vaccine that can be used by forget about the friendly countries or the other world, even its own population, I doubt. I mean, immediately it cannot be made available. So through multilateral diplomacy, through multilateral vaccine diplomacy, we may have a solution or a ray of hope or a light in this tunnel. So I would like to speak a little more about this COVAX pillar. It is based on the principle of pooling of resources by the participant nation, and the basic idea is to speed up the vaccine making, because we cannot wait until the vaccine is made or tested or tried and then we manufacture for the people. So what they are doing is they are financially backing the most promising vaccine that we have, vaccine trials or vaccine under making, we can say, that we have. They are financially backing, and another important or beautiful concept with this COVAX pillar is equitable distribution of vaccine. That was highlighted by the first speaker, how we are going to have vaccine for everyone. So through this equitable distribution of vaccine, this scheme is like insurance policy for the rich nations. They may have the bilateral, collaborations with any pharmaceutical country, but this is like a parallel option for them. And in return, what they have is they have assurance that whenever the vaccine will be made, they will have it. The 20% of population will have it maybe by the end of 2021 if we are successful in getting a vaccine by the end of this year. And for the poor or underdeveloped nations, they will also be part of this. They will also be beneficiary of this, even if they are unable to purchase or pay for the vaccine. So this is the beauty of this COVAX pillar. And a few submissions that I would like to make during my study, what I found, coronavirus pandemic has made us realize that human predicament are shared. We all go down to this crisis. And this shared problem needs shared answer. We cannot, compartmentalize based on maybe a hypernational idea or regional idea or any other preference. Second, another observation is state actors alone are failing to find solutions to contemporary issues. We have seen in the beginning of this coronavirus crisis that how developed nations or how the leadership in the developed nations or the Western nations reacted to this pandemic, from all the conspiracy theory to hoax, and how things unraveled in course of time. So state actors do not have that commitment or willpower to fight with crisis like this. And here comes the role of non-state actors, which is very important for us, and they have larger share, greater role to play, as we are seeing in the case of COVAX pillar. It's a classic example where I believe for the first time in the human history, a non-state actors has pulled almost 172 nations together to find out solution of this crisis, and they are working on this. Another observation or submission is what we have now is every nation is engaged in some kind of war. It could be proxy war or it could be direct war. And coming from India, I have witnessed the past few months were not easy for us, be it with China or Nepal or other neighboring countries. So we need to step forward. We need to step forward from that competing or combating approach or attitude towards maybe our neighbors or the other powers or other stakeholders involved. And we need to have more collaborative and co-optive diplomacy or approach towards problem solving that we are having right now. And we need to be prepared, as somebody has said, that we are entering the age of pandemic, and we had 4 epidemics in the last 2 decades. So it's now or never for us. If we are not ready to collaborate at multilateral fronts, it will be very difficult for the humanity to sustain. And at last, I would like to say it is very important to believe in science. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Sonali. Are there any questions? Does anybody want to ask Sonali? You have a question, Bhaskar?
Not exactly. No,
okay.
no.
So can I ask you a question, Dr. Sonali?
Sure.
This is regarding the availability of the vaccine. There are conflicting reports, and from the people that I spoke to in the pharma industry, they said that it will not actually be available for equitable distribution, at least to the general population, until 2022. Okay, so, and by then, I believe apparently we will develop herd immunity. So if there is any information that you have on this, can you tell us something more? Because then, the utility of the vaccine is lost as such. Probably a new pandemic will arrive by then and we will have to develop another vaccine. So how do you see the situation?
Right. Thank you, Chair, for your question. What I found in my study that the COVAX pillar plays a major role in this, and through the equitable distribution, their commitment is first for the most vulnerable population. So they are committed to provide the vaccine first to the healthcare professionals and to the old age people and to the people who have chronic disease. So this is the trick behind this commitment. And of course, you are right. If we are late in making the vaccine available, we will have the herd immunity by 2022. So it will be lost. But if we get succeeded, we will have the 2021 a hopeful year for like most of us. Yeah, that's that I can say for now. Thank you.
I think with that, we have come to the end of this session because one of the speakers is not there. So if anybody doesn't have any questions, can we just wind up this session? Can I have one question for Dr. Anna?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. So Dr. Anna, your thesis was, your presentation was about humanitarian diplomacy, foreign policy goals and public diplomacy. I already asked you some questions, but how do you see Russia's position after this pandemic? Where do you see Russia? Will it be one of the leading powers because it has developed a vaccine early and it is involved in so much of humanitarian work among the underdeveloped countries? Do you think that it'll be playing a very crucial role in international relations in the post-COVID world order? However you look at it, in whatever way you perceive it, we just want to have your views on that.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Saraswathi, for raising this question. You mean in various spheres, what
Yes.
role played by Russia?
In any field, the way you look at how Russia can position itself after the pandemic, the post-COVID world order, from the point of view of, say, humanitarian help that it has given to various countries, and the distribution of vaccines also can be used as a point of reference. But you can express and give us your view from any point of view that you think fit.
Yes, thanks a lot. I suppose that in the international arena, Russia positions itself as a country that provides stable world order, and Russians are always appealing towards justice. That it's what about Dostoevsky was always writing about this our universal values and happiness of the whole mankind, and for sure Russia counters legalistic moralistic approach that we were predicting that all these humanitarian interventions would lead towards humanitarian disasters, and now when we are witnessing that now there are about 80 million displaced people that our human history has never witnessed it. But during the International Studies Association conventions, I was always attending John Mearsheimer's lections and sessions with him, and now I've heard him thanks to Nepal International Association, Cooperation Association, and during his presentation he was again mentioning these points that for sure Russia has global ambitions and maybe it has enough resources, but for sure our weak economy is a great obstacle for it. So much more could be done in this sphere in order to ensure our possible role in the post-COVID world order.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Velika.
Thank
So
you.
I'd like to thank all the panelists.
Can I have a very small question, though we
Yes,
have
please.
time?
Yes.
Yeah, my question is about very recently there was a debate about the vaccine nationalism, which is where we find people.
Whom are you addressing your question to?
I'm addressing all three panelists because these three are representing different countries, and the issue like
Angroli has raised her hand.
yeah, the issue is like vaccine nationalism, and there was a big essay published in Foreign Policy Journal. So the countries are fighting, fighting in the sense there is a competition, we can say, to develop vaccine for this coronavirus. So how this some scholars are arguing this is the emerging trend of vaccine nationalism. So how this vaccine nationalism, how you people as a scholar perceive or see this vaccine nationalism and how it will affect to the geopolitics of the Asia around the world. I mean, this
Maybe
question
we can address this question to Swechha
okay.
because she raised her hand. Is
Okay.
she there? Are you there? Swechha?
Okay.
Swechha was there just now.
Yeah, unmute yourself. Unmute yourself, please. Switch on.
Swechha, Sangrolia?
Yeah, you just unmute yourself first.
Myself.
Okay, no, switch. Wait. Okay, now do it.
Why?
Okay, now do it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Unfortunately, I raised my hand to add to your question because I want to hear from perhaps Madam Chair and also our esteemed panelists. I was very, this was exactly the question I had in my mind, and I'm not an international relations expert, so I'm not in a position to answer this. I have a cause for concern. Metaphorically, Nepal is a country with great civilization. We're strong in our own aspects, but in a lot of ways, as a landlocked country, we are not in a position. I am concerned for my government to have a stand to reject some countries. Like that's the kind of thing I'm thinking. Does Nepal have the temerity to reject some countries if they feel, even though they are big, that may not be in our best interest, or they may not play by the ethical rules? Number one, and number two, that is definitely a big question that I have, and it's a cause for concern. And I echo the sentiments of Dr. Sonali. I definitely believe the hopefulness. I will definitely share the hopefulness that you've talked about. But I'm just trying to play the devil's advocate here and talk about the lessons from the past that we may not have learned as well. So that is a question. I'm just worried that Nepal may not be in a position, due to a number of other geopolitical reasons, to even say no to a country, or if they say yes to a certain country, what kind of other pressures will it have to endure in the days to come? And we don't know how much a lot of information is in the public domain. So it might be there might be a lot of struggle as big powers compete with their vaccines and jostle for power. We may have an issue. Despite my optimism, I have a concern about countries like Nepal. Yeah, that's a question, but unfortunately, I don't have an answer to your question. But I would love to hear from my panelists.
And Sonali, Dr. Sonali.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. That was a wonderful question, and a big no to vaccine nationalism, the debate you were talking about. If I speak in principle, but of course, in reality, this may happen, and it is happening. There is, race or competition among nations to come first with a vaccine. It will also add to the soft power advantage of that nation, as in case of Russia. But again, it's a little controversial. We can put it aside. But there's, if we talk about the world order, it is guided by the liberal institutionalism sometimes, or we are talking about what Fred Delmeyer has said, post-liberal society, where we talk about recovering from our past and working for a shared future. But still, I do believe that realism play an important role. What Sweksha said, that power is important. And although non-state actors have evolved and played a greater role, state actors have not come out from their shell that they are not that significant anymore. So it is like living in their own dreamland, and it will be destructive for all of us. So if I talk in principle, there should be multilateral cooperation. And if we promote this vaccine nationalism, we will end up having, another conflict, another problem. So it will be like a vicious circle. And this is not going to end with this pandemic itself. We have other shared issues that we need to resolve, like the global warming or terrorism or nuclear non-proliferation. We need to address those things. So this is an opportunity. Corona pandemic is an opportunity for us to just reflect what we have done in the past and to learn that how we can just move forward and how we can work together for a better and shared future. But will that happen in reality or not is a big question. But I would just close my remarks with a hopeful note that hopefully it will. Yeah.
Madam, unmute yourself. Ma'am, unmute yourself. Yes.
Host muted you. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Okay, there is a question that has come from Abzalur Rahman to everyone. What is the role of WHO in the auditing of pharmaceutical companies' experiment of vaccine in developing countries like Nepal? So who would like to answer this? Do we have time for this question?
I can try to answer that question.
So, you can see the question, right?
Yes, yes. So this is an interesting question. I noted as regards Nepal, the WHO has not made comments at this point about, they leave it to the sovereign right of states to whether allow proposals from different countries on vaccines. So the WHO in this regard is not able to have a definitive say. Of course, when the clinical trials are taking place, it is left to the jurisdiction of countries and their national laws and their national ethic bodies to say yes or no to vaccine proposals. So the problem is really in terms of geopolitical realities, whether Nepal is actually in a position to even say, XYZ company, you don't meet the ethical requirements and legal requirements of Nepal. But are we able to say that, keeping in mind other considerations? And of course, in countries like Nepal also have a pressure, developing countries under sustainable development goals, human rights obligations, to try to make it seem like they're trying hard and seem credible in the eyes of the public that they are doing something. So in light of these utilitarian and efficiency-based considerations and good publicity, governments want to stay in power. So this is a great opportunity for them to say, look, we've just invited 3 stakeholders to carry out vaccine trials in Nepal. So a whole bunch of extra legal considerations take place, but the WHO will not really interfere in Nepal's sovereign right to accept or reject, if we even have that power to reject, would be my answer. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we all do know about the limitations of the role of WHO, and I think Mr. Rahman, you're aware that with these limitations, the WHO is still the only body that can speak globally and set standards. So let us hope that the WHO's, those countries that abide by the WHO, which most countries are abiding by the WHO, will be careful about the way in which they develop the vaccine and ensure that it's available to all very soon. So can we conclude our section with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you want to make any concluding remark?
I have been making these remarks, so I think.
Okay. So, Sri Lakshmi, close to you now. Sri Lakshmi?
Yeah, sir. I'm audible?
Yes.
Okay. So, distributed chair speakers, ladies and gentlemen, as we came to the end of this section, I deem it a great honor to propose a vote of thanks on the behalf of INNCE and WPC to all our gratitude us with a presence and contributed their part to make event a resounding success. First of all we would like to express our profuse gratitude and sincerity thanks to Dr. Saraswathi Unni for agreeing to chair and moderate the section today. Our sincere thanks also go to all our speakers for being a part of the event and delivering such a comprehensive and convincing presentation. We all are honored. So thank you for all of you coming here.
And please join us for next session.
Thank you.
We are on the next session, as it will be on 17:45. So still one more hour. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
So Rao Sahib, now you can have your lunch if you have not had it. You have 1 hour break.
It's 5. It's lunch, buffer, or dinner. I don't know.
You know, it's like the world. We say good morning, good afternoon, good evening. So it's like
It's like
Actually,
everything.
for someone, it's dinner for someone, it's breakfast for someone.
so
Sumit
sorry for the
Gavali might be
interruption.
having his breakfast. Sorry. Yeah.
So sorry
Yes,
for the
Lakshmi?
interruption, but I have one question to Sonali ma'am.
Good. Ask.
Yeah, sure. Please ask.
Ma'am, as you told that you're studying on recent current epidemic, so I have one question regarding this. Nowadays, the pandemic is going up and up. In recent news only, I came to know that vaccine has been come in the Oxford University, but still it is getting what we say
Human trial?
researching.
In process.
Yeah. I meant to
Not came to market it.
in process. It is in the process. So everyone, even each of one child also asking that when we will have our own that previous life.
Yeah, thank you, Sri Lakshmi, for your question. I'm basically a student of political science, and for my PhD, I have worked on public diplomacy. And vaccine diplomacy is something that I started studying very recently, and this paper is in no progress. So, of course, like everyone you talked about, I'm also curious when we will be back to the normal. And I'm sorry to say there won't be the same normal that we
Thank you,
had
Victoria.
before. You know, yeah, there won't be that same normal because everything has changed. You must have seen, in our daily life, we are having masks while social distancing and self quarantine. These are the terms that everyone is talking about in the recent 5 to 6 months. So I believe the same normal will not come back. And as the conference theme is about the new normal will be different. We have to be, more cautious, more careful. And as I talked during my presentation, we need to be more cooperative and collaborative, more empathetic, more, caring towards each other rather than just, targeting in all those ruthless behavior, be it towards individuals or nations or towards anyone. So the normal that you're talking about, sadly, I feel that will not come back. It will come back, but in another form. We have to, just adapt to the new normal. Am I did I answer your question?
Yeah, ma'am. Thank you.
I'm sorry, may I have one comment, if I may?
Please.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, I just like to say that although currently motives of national egoism and national interest prevail, but I suppose that as Dr. Singh was mentioning about Cold War, Smorodov-Sabin cooperation in polio eradication, that I hope that science diplomacy would come to our aid, and maybe there will be some cooperation of doctors, of independent medical associations, so some ethnic standards would be launched. And I hope that science diplomacy would help us in the sphere of medicine and in the sphere of international relations to better understand each other.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely. Absolutely, I totally agree with you. What we need is, more health education or medical literacy for our citizens, and a greater policy umbrella. Maybe in our education system, we need to prepare our children to be ready for such pandemics in future. So for that, science diplomacy is going to play a major role.